Namaskar. Thank you so much for your kind introduction, Sushma. It is a pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Mrinalini, for connecting with me and inviting me to speak today. My subject is a very serious one, so I'm starting on a light note. So there was this performer who was singing Hindustani classical on the stage with his eyes closed. Certain people were sitting in the audience, and every time he opened his eyes, there were some people missing. And again, he would close his eyes and start singing until the last item was finished, and he looked up and he saw at least one person sitting there. He was very happy, and he said, wow, at least one person is sitting there. So he said, wow, you're really interested? He asked the person in classical music. And he says, no, sir, I'm the watchman. I'm waiting so that I can close the doors of this auditorium after you leave. So the same is the case with me. I do hope that the seriousness of my talk doesn't lead people into leaving. So anyway, on this light note, let me start. So there is no end to the sharing of knowledge. And at the end of the session, I really hope I will have given some takeaways to ponder upon. We humans are interacting with the world on a daily basis, reacting and trying to cope with these reactions. At the same time, we are grappling with our own inadequacies, our complexes, our prejudices, developed through early conditioning, and many other self-esteem issues that we have. And gradually, we are also establishing thinking patterns based on our experiences. And these patterns tend to become our habits after a while. I have found that our human journeys are fraught with conflict, largely because we have these 5 kleshas or afflictions within us. This knowledge helped me change my perspectives greatly, and I trust they will help you all too. I'm going to make the introduction a little detailed before we examine the 5 afflictions. So during my political science days in college, a line by the well-known philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau made a huge impact on me and became the underlying thread of my life. It said, man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. This really intrigued me at first and then started bothering me, and I started looking for answers. I needed to expand my awareness to get some clarity on this, and I tried. But every experience in my life told me that I exist beyond my body, mind, intellect, and ego. And yet, I felt like I was bound by my worldly identity and circumstances that limited me and curbed free enterprise. All those years ago, I read Shakespeare, and Shakespeare said something very profound. He wrote, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and entrances. So taking this further, having conducted several past life regression sessions, my worldview changed drastically. And I began to understand my link with the other world, with the divine, which is our source. And I realized that if we are just playing roles here, the whole purpose of birth and death must be merely to fulfill our karmic agenda, which is set up even before we are born, so that we can experience our karma and learn from them. And this is what we were meant to do in this life. Our souls work within the confines of our bodies and minds, which are controlled by time, space, and causation. Every cause has an effect, either immediate or long-term. And this determines our karmic balance sheet and keeps us moving in a cycle of birth and death. And since we are only playing a role, we also carry a false identity of that character that we play. Our karmic script is mostly written for each of us, with some amount of free will thrown in. And I believe this free will is given to us to work on ourselves, to heal every unhealed aspect of our life with study, with reflection, and meditation, to heal our karmic files and to unveil our true selves. Now, this cannot be achieved only with textbook knowledge. It requires hardcore practice. Many years ago, I had written an article in the Indian Express titled, "Scholars are not necessarily practitioners." I realized very long ago that bookish knowledge is not enough for our revolution. We need to access our subconscious minds and heal the memories that are stored in there. There are several imprints of past memories of unhealed files waiting to be dealt with. These unpleasant memories we carry from life to life. We have the complete power to heal ourselves with the tools that the universe has provided for us generously, like Dharma. But we often tend to misuse the free will given to us by wrapping ourselves around the temptations of this world instead of fulfilling the true purpose that we are here to fulfill. Our basic nature, our tendencies, do not always encourage healing, unfortunately. On one hand, there is a tremendous backlog of karma to be healed, but on the other hand, human afflictions are deep-seated, very deep-seated. And so, the human mind develops exactly those traits it should be moving away from, actually. Wrong thinking patterns leading to conflicting behavior, creating more and more negative karma. The antidote to karma is Dharma. I wrote a book called Dharma by Design, A Universe in Harmony in 2020 in the thick of COVID, and I elucidated the 4 pillars of Dharma as truth, austerity, cleanliness, and compassion. These are the ones that form the basis of righteous living, and that the outcome of wrong thinking patterns and wrong action causes not only no healing, but lifelong pain, suffering, and unhappiness. Why is it so? It is important to understand. We need to understand that the basic nature of this world is duality. The good is recognized by the bad, the love is recognized by fear, and the light is known by darkness. So also we have a dual personality, one which is light and positive and happy, and the other which is dark and needs to be dealt with. It is an unhealed part, your shadow. Understanding the afflictions will help us to accept our negative and toxic dark spaces, and within us transmute those into light. But first we need to analyze the components of those dark spaces, right? If we don't know them in the first place, where do we begin? And understanding what plagues us is vital to this transformation. As they say, if you want pearls, you need to dive deep into the ocean. Or you can choose to remain at a superficial level and gain nothing from your birth. So we will attempt to understand this amazing package that sage Patanjali has given us to transform and reform ourselves, to understand ourselves, to cleanse negativities, and gain wisdom to evolve. Evolve from where to where? Out of our false identities into our true identities. So now let us start speaking about the 5 human afflictions. In slide 1, that is being projected now, you see that the 5 afflictions are in the form of a tree. The trunk is the root, which is Avidya, and the other 4 branches are those that will be removed automatically if Avidya is removed. Avidya is ignorance. So the 5 Basic afflictions are Avidya, which is ignorance, Asmita, which is egoism, Raga, which is attachment, Dvesha, that is aversion, hatred, or dislike, and the last being Abhinavesha, which is the fear of death. Slide 2. Now, the first and the most important affliction is avidya or ignorance. It is the very platform that upholds all the other four. As you can see, ignorance is given at the trunk of the tree. If you cut the trunk, all the branches automatically fall off. Ignorance is very important to understand because it implies many things. Clearly, simplistically, it is the lack of vidya. Avidya is the lack of vidya, knowledge. It also implies a lack of the right kind of knowledge, the kind that is elevating knowledge. It is often attempted knowledge which is not correctly understood. It can also be conveniently and deliberately misconstrued knowledge. We have two types of ignorance. We work on two levels. One is related to our worldly persona. We call it our lower self. And the other is related to our soul persona, which we call the higher self. We will look at both. Not understanding the reality or the truth, we tend to misunderstand, we tend to misinterpret it. Like when we see a rope, we see a snake in the rope. So that is the illusion that we live with. The outcome of such ignorance is wrong reaction, wrong action, and reality becomes illusory. The outcome is also negative. There are other examples of ignorance. Many a time, if you have noticed, we don't have the correct answers. We think we know, but actually we don't. And we won't admit it too. And we'll act anyway with half knowledge, even misguided knowledge. And sometimes we don't know anything at all about any particular subject, but will project outside that we know it all. Our ego won't admit to being ignorant. So we end up talking without experience, often with bookish knowledge, and sometimes not even that. But interestingly, once in a while, the ego defies knowledge in what is called deliberate ignorance. If you remember in Mahabharata, Duryodhana tells Krishna that he knows what is right, that Krishna need not tell him what is right. So he has the right knowledge, but he says he does not feel like doing it. Even though he has the knowledge, he doesn't want to do what is right. And we all know what happened with that one statement. We knew and we understood the far-reaching consequences that happened as they happen in this world today when you do similar things. So there is no learning in such cases, even though there is knowledge, because knowledge has to translate into learning. So ignorance prevents learning. It also immerses us in a whirlpool of all kinds of negative situations, from which the only thing that can extricate us is vidya. To know better, to understand better, to do better. As an aside, a word of caution here. One of the main reasons for all this is that all of us seek approval and validation from the world. And we feel that if we expose our ignorance, we will not be respected. But the fact is, we will trigger genuine learning only when we are honest enough to admit that we don't know and that we need to know. And there should be no shame in acknowledging that. So far, we spoke of the ignorance lodged into our lower selves, that self which actually identifies with our ego. But as I said earlier, we also have a higher self at the soul level. This reflects upon the deeper metaphysical questions like, who are we? Why are we here? And what is the purpose of our lives? Our minds are so wrapped up in this world that we don't even think of the needs of our higher self. So let's understand this. Our true self is that we are divine beings. not ordinary human beings. Our reality today is that for a period of time, our soul comes to experience a transactional reality, a temporary place called the world. We are here just to learn our lessons and transform our dark spaces into light. As I see this, it is pretty much the essence of our lives, and therein probably lies our entire journey. And for this, the constant connection with the divine energy is very vital to our health in every way. How do we do that? So it's interesting that in Vedanta, we read about three perspectives of our connection with the divine as projected in a story which is connected with Lord Hanuman. So when Hanuman is asked, what is your relationship with the Lord? And he says, if I am a slave, it is because my master is a superior power that governs me. If there is a collective supreme energy, then I am a part of it. That's the second. And as in the understanding of Advaita Vedanta, if the absolute truth is only one, and there is only one consciousness, then there is no separation of any kind between my Lord and me. Then I am the divine self itself. Aham Brahmasmi, as we say. I am that. I am the divine. This is the most exhilarating definition that actually is complete by itself. It's complete enlightenment and needs no further knowledge. Everything falls away when you realize that you are that, the divine. Then you might come down to the worldly level of curiosity and say, okay, so if I am the Brahman, who are you? The answer that comes back is Tattvamasi. You are also Brahman. Again, the question comes, if I am Brahman and you are also Brahman, who are they, the others? And the answer comes back, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. They too are Brahman. So all of us are a part of a collective consciousness. We are the collective consciousness. So once we know who we are, the very realization of our vastness kills any chance of the survival of either an ego, attachments, aversion, or fear of death, the kleshas that we will be speaking about. And we become free from that bondage we felt when we were unaware of this big truth. Detachment from any involvement in the world happens automatically with this realization. And all our karmic agenda from so many lifetimes is healed instantly. Next slide. So we move on to the next one. The next slide is the affliction called Asmita. We call it our ego identity, the I identity, the isness, the knowing that I am. There are two aspects to the ego, a destructive and a constructive one. The first aspect is concerned with what is called Avidya Maya. It is actually, as translated, knowledge illusion, the illusion of ignorance. It is the veil of ignorance that is upon us. And in this, there is absence of wisdom. This happens when the ego identifies with the body and mind and all its desires and negativities. It is a false identification of your true self. It is the lower self identifying with the ego. And this is the ego which gets wrapped and involved in samsara, this transient world. So it is almost like you have stuck another shot of your own picture over your earlier photo in your passport. Now, both are you. Both are you, the same person, but you have hidden your authentic self to become someone else instead of recognizing that you are the original picture you have now hidden. So to bring back your original self, ironically, you must use this very ego by subjugating it. Only then will you see clearly. Because we want to transit from Avidya Maya to Vidya Maya. This is the path of knowledge that unveils wisdom. And through this knowledge, we gain clarity, move beyond the grossness into our spiritual evolution. We want to tear apart that photo pasted on top of our photo and reveal our true identity on the passport. It is as simple as that, but takes lifetimes. And I want to ask actually, why do we want to create a false identity based on labels, achievements, external possessions, creating a separation between us and other souls? And most importantly, separation from our own true self, which is our only reality. This is the whole issue. Our false identity is built up from the moment we are born. Our name, parents, family, religion, ambition, even likes and dislikes. And there is little accent on teachings of our inner world, of values, of who we are, and how we should move through this world. We seem to have the wrong priorities in our ignorance. We are drawn to financial gain, power, prosperity, name, fame, etc. These continue to strengthen our false identity and magnify our egos big time, often into becoming narcissistic and megalomaniacs even. Complete imbalances. So spiritually, this becomes extremely damaging and not desirable at all. But Asmita, or ego, as I said, has ironically to exist because this is the only means to developing the wisdom of Vidya Maya. So we live to eliminate that ego, which is our false identity, to expose that ego, which is our false identity, to unveil our real identity in Vidya Maya. So this is the nature of our ego. The next slide, Raga or attachment. Now, taking off from the ego, as long as the ego identifies with the lower self, it will naturally flow into the next affliction, which is attachment or Raga. The I identity of the ego gets translated into me, mine. So my life, my family, my power, my money, my contacts, my ambitions, and so on. But the reality is, no ownership is possible. Nothing can belong to you because everything is passing. We are flowing in life and we are not taking anything with us. We're just playing a scripted role. When that script is over, we leave even that script behind and leave this world. And yet, our ignorance has to be marveled at. The false self still thrives on such desires. These are thick cords of attachments that have formed through many lifetimes, which take a long time and consistent practice to break. Because the fact is, how this happens is, first we get attracted to something. Then we start liking it. Then there arises a desire to own it as mine. I want it. And then we want to be the only one owning it. But it doesn't end there. There's a strong me and there's a strong you and they as a result, which says, you are not me, so no one else can have what I have. And worse, you want it at any cost, even dishonestly and non-ethically. So attachment separates you from others. Again, the false self raises a lot of conflicts. And to remind you again, the higher self we spoke about works differently. It lives within a collective consciousness. It lives with a connected consciousness, not a separatist one. It is wise and sees others as part of it and sees itself as a part of others. So you see, imbalances of the lower self lead to a greater imbalance in families, in societies, and crimes are also an offshoot of such extreme tendencies in the human beings. These are tendencies of a polluted mind, a severely polluted mind. That's why one of the spiritual principles is to stay away from attachments, to detach from excessive desires and cravings, and practice austerity and contentment. Often when I teach this, students are cynical. They scoff at these thoughts and ask, Which world are you living in, ma'am? This is the biggest tragedy of today, I find. We've failed in continuing to pass on our superb cultural heritage of dharmic principles from ancient India. The environment today emphasizes only worldly success. Nothing wrong with this, provided we also protect our spiritual heritage. So now where there is raga, the opposite side of the coin is dvesha. Dvesha means hate, dislike, and the more you like, the more you also have the capacity to hate. So just imagine a mind filled with dislike, hatred, and feelings like envy, jealousy, etc. It is a diseased mind, nothing short of a diseased mind. When you don't like something, wisdom demands that you walk away from it, but intense dislike can breed thoughts of vengeance, destruction, of causing harm, or bringing those you dislike down. Consequently, both likes and dislikes become imbalances and they cause negative outcomes. And the effects are conflict, anger, pain, suffering, end of relationships, and much, much more. So a polluted mind can only think, speak, and act in a polluted manner. It is a fact that what is inside you will somehow manifest outside, and you can't prevent that from happening. And of course, with the cycle of cause and effects, you are adding to your cycle of karma as well. I always question, therefore, is it worth it to enter this whirlpool from which there is no escape at all? All these are just manifestations of the human ignorance that we are speaking about today. Coming to the last affliction now, Abhinavesha, which is the fear of death. So, we talked about Avidya, being ignorant of our higher selves, thinking that this world is our reality. We talked about Asmita, which is our ego, identifying with our lower self and getting involved in desires, cravings, name and fame, which in spiritual language only bring pain and suffering to us. Then we spoke of raga or attachments, which make us cling to life, the comfort level of our false identification with our physical form. That's all it is. And then we spoke about dvesha, the negative feelings against those we dislike and hate, and the negative actions also that emanate out of that. So fear of death comes from all of these false belief systems. The fear of death is fear of the unknown. Think about it, the thought, what happens to me once I die? I have no answers. But deep down, I know also that life is flowing away and there is no control over it. This attachment is binding us to suffering because the true nature of death eludes us. Birth and death are two extreme points in our journey, and both are inevitable, as we know. The crux of this inability to accept death lies in our multiple desires to cling to life and to remain eternally alive. We don't realize that desires in a temporary world are also temporary. Your negatives and positives can only bind you more and more in your karmic cycle and create further bondage. Death is visualized almost like an eternal blackout of a kind, a dark ending to our limited minds and limited understanding. We are clinging to the known and scared of losing the comfort of our I identity because we know no other. But the truth is, our eternal soul has been given this body and mind only as a vehicle to gain the right knowledge to eliminate this veil of ignorance that we are only ordinary human beings. We are not. Aham Brahmasmi is our true identity. We have to realize this truth. But there is no easy way out of ignorance. The path is difficult and it has to be experiential. And it will isolate us in many ways. The birth of wisdom is also a painful process of letting go of old belief systems, situations which are binding, and people who will inevitably leave your life in some ways, not that all of them will. but things will fall away from your sense of comfort. That is for sure. It also takes us away from the comforts of a false life that we have painstakingly built for ourselves in complete ignorance. We have to reverse that now. But if we have the will and the courage to embark on that path, we will, with regular and determined practice, arrive at a point where the joy comes from within. It is not dependent on external stimuli. All we need is a quiet and an open mind and a lot of time for study, reflection, and internalization of knowledge to illuminate us. I end with a quote by Patanjali. He says, "There is always a light within us that is free from all sorrow and grief, no matter how much we may be experiencing suffering." So may we all expand that light each moment of our lives. Thank you. I do hope the session was not too heavy for you all and that you enjoyed it.